I guess I should have wore like a suit or something. I'm sitting with Phreshy, you know. Um, how's it going? How you been?
I've been blessed.
Uh-huh.
Can't complain about a lot.
Uh-huh.
Things can be worse. I know a lot of people that are
Yeah.
not doing as good as I am. So I'm
Yeah.
blessed. I like to leave it at that.
Uh-huh. It's this thing called PR. You know, they say that you're in it. So what's PR all about?
Whew. PR is public relations, and
Uh-huh.
I can give you a textbook term and say public relations is the narration
Mm-hmm.
of a person's brand to the general public and the media. But
Mm-hmm.
essentially, public relations is telling someone's story for them
Yeah.
and helping them get to where they want to be in life.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
How'd you get started in that?
Um,
Yeah.
I technically I've been doing it my whole life. I've always been a person who loved to connect the dots for people. Who I love to see people succeed and I love to see people win. And even more than just seeing them win, I love to be a part of that so I can feel what it's like to start from ground zero and make my way up to the top. And
Mm-hmm.
so, been doing it my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Went through real estate,
Mm-hmm.
did property management, worked for a Fortune 500 company, made about six figures
Yeah.
in my
Wow.
20s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wasn't really happy.
Wow.
And one of the things I've learned is when you follow your plan instead of God's plan for your life,
Mm-hmm.
you tend to lose everything
Mm-hmm.
only to regain everything again.
Yeah.
And so it was one of them situations where I was living a life that I shouldn't have been living, although I was happy monetarily. I wasn't happy spiritually, and I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
connected, and I wasn't doing my due diligence in life. And so I
Mm-hmm.
kind of got out of real estate. I started as a celebrity stylist. I started writing for magazines, and
Mm-hmm.
then one thing led to another. I put everything together and said, I'm going to create this brand
Mm-hmm.
where I can help a person get from point A to point
Mm-hmm.
B.
That's so interesting. Like, how does one go from real estate to PR? Like, how do those two correlate? Like, what happened in your life for you to say, hey, I'm done with what I'm doing right now. I'm about to go and do PR. And what gave you that belief in yourself to even start in that journey, especially when got a real estate background?
It
Yeah,
was, I think it's a lot of other people. A lot of times
yeah.
God put people in your life and they see things in you that you're supposed to see in yourself and you don't necessarily see it in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was leasing apartments or I was selling apartments or locating apartments for people, I was doing it on a level where it was a high scale level. And I realized while doing so, I wasn't into the real estate of everything. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't into the sales of everything. I really didn't care about the commission. My whole goal and my happiness came from being able to help a single family find their first place to stay, being able to help a recent college graduate make the decision on where they should stay. It was more so on the marketing side. I found myself loving more creating the resident
Yeah,
events
yeah.
and being around the residents and fellowshipping with them than I did the actual job. And so that made me think like, what is it that I'm really supposed to be doing? Because although I'm in this field, it's the total opposite for me. What everybody else love about the field, the money, the glitz and the
Yeah,
glamour, I
yeah,
love the total opposite about that field. And so
yeah,
it just made me start soul searching and trying to figure
yeah,
out exactly what I needed and what I wanted to
yeah.
be.
So you like PR for the opposite reason that most people might like PR, right? Being the glitz and the glam. What did you actually mean by that?
Um, I'm While the red carpets and everything are great, and while meeting everybody that I've ever wanted to meet in my life is great,
Mm-hmm.
and being at some of the coolest parties, I think more so what's meaningful for me and what makes me feel like I'm going down the right path is I'm a part of someone's journey
Mm-hmm.
to see them succeed. I think a lot of times people don't see that. People don't see the long hours, and people don't see the passion you have behind someone else's brand. And a lot of times, being passionate about someone else's brand teaches you a lot of things about yourself. I'm the type of person I love to learn and I love to evolve. And I don't know everything. And so I'm always wanting to learn and wanting to soak up everything. And so one of the coolest things about PR is it's forever changing. And because it's forever changing, it's forever making me want to learn more and want to achieve more in life. And so that is the biggest benefit to me when it comes to PR.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds to me like you got a lot of ethics, right?
Right.
And usually, typically, when people have a lot of ethics, they grew up a certain way. So
Mhm.
how did you grow up? Like, what's the backstory about Freshie?
Oh, well, I didn't have the best growing up story. started off shaky. I had parents that were in the industry. I had very popular aunts. Kind of grew up with a lot of rappers in Houston. Grew up with the whole, well, I didn't personally, but my parents grew up with the whole rap a lot
Mm.
phenomenon. And so entertainment and the streets was always something in my family. Have a lot of NFL players in my family.
Mhm.
So I've kind of always grown up around a fast lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah.
Fast forward a little bit, my mom ended up getting on drugs. My dad ended up going to jail.
Mm.
I went to a foster home, but
Mm.
my two brothers and sisters that I was raised with, it was a total of 7 of us, but it was 2 particular that my mom and my dad had alongside me. We share both same mom, same dad. They ended up going with my grandparents. I ended up going to a foster home. The change in trajectory in my life is when my grandparents found me.
Mm.
And so, because I was a child who I felt was abandoned, I went through a lot of traumatic experiences so early on. I felt lucky when my grandparents found me. And so, it's always been into me to make them proud.
Mhm.
From a very young age, I always wanted to make sure that because they gave, I felt like my grandparents, my grandma already raised her kids. Grandfather already raised, well, he didn't have any kids outside of my grandma's kids. But I felt like they gave up their life to make sure that we could have a good life. And I was always appreciative of that. I wasn't a perfect child. I mean, I had my fair share of
Yeah.
my ways and things as
Mhm.
well. But one of the children who, I was one of the kids who always did what my grandparents told me I should do. I didn't drink. I didn't drink before the age I was supposed to drink. I didn't go out and I didn't party. I did pretty much everything right. The only problem I had was my mouth, and I always fought. And so I used to grow up thinking I was going to be on the radio,
Yeah.
because I just love to talk and I love to engage in conversation.
Mhm.
I love to argue. But after an internship, it kind of led me another way. So, I mean,
Mhm.
growing up, I just was always the child that I knew what I wanted.
Mhm.
I knew that I wanted to take care of my family and I wanted to take care of the people around me. And so I would
Mhm.
have to hustle and I would have to get out there and get what I wanted. And
Yeah.
anything I've ever said I wanted in my life, I've always gotten.
Yeah. What was your first job?
My first job was, I still remember this. My first job was a Six Flags job. It was Splash Town. Before that, I had other jobs. Like, I remember me and my little cousins.
Mhm.
We went and took everything out of my grandparents' garage, my
Yeah.
aunt's
Yeah.
garage, and we had a garage sale with their stuff. That turned out to be something we
Right.
shouldn't have
Right.
been
Right.
doing.
Right. Right.
And then we just started doing odds and ends. I remember working for the newspaper, the local
Mhm.
newspaper with
Mhm.
my aunt Anna. Shout out to her, rest in peace. And then my first official job was Splash Town. It
Mhm.
was a Six Flags park in Houston, and I got the job because one of my aunts actually knew the HR representative. Um, it was it was my first job. It was my favorite job. I always wanted that job. I always wanted to work. My grandparents didn't want me to work. They wanted me to focus on school. And so when I got the opportunity to work, I was super excited. I actually lost that job.
Mm.
I actually got fired from every job I probably had because I don't think it was ever meant for me to work for people, but I've always been a hard worker. I
Right.
just always
Right.
wanted to be the boss.
Mhm.
And so it was one of them type of things. Like, I love the job so much, I end up crying when I got fired.
Right. What was the biggest defining moment of your life? Like, what was that turning point for you to say, okay, this is where I want to take my life? Because Freshie, the brand, is an actual brand. And I
Mhm.
think when people think of you, what would you say they think? They think PR, correct?
They think PR.
Right.
And a lot of people who don't understand what PR, they think I'm
Yeah.
just around a lot of celebrities.
Yeah.
I'm a professional partier.
Yeah.
And that is definitely the total opposite of who I
Right.
really am.
Right.
Um,
I would say PR, this is my opinion. I would say PR is more so a creative and
mhm,
almost in a sense the same as a creative director because you're going to necessarily be directing somebody's life in the sense of where they're going to go creatively.
mhm.
Correct or
Correct.
no?
Um, to a certain extent,
Yeah.
I think you do get those
Yeah,
clients
yeah, yeah.
where you can be more than just a publicist
Okay.
for, but then I do have those fair share of clients where strictly you want media, that's what it is, that's
Yeah.
our
Yeah,
relationship. So I
yeah, yeah.
think it all depends on the clientele.
Okay, okay.
And it all depends on the client professional relationship too.
Mhm.
Because some of my clients I'm more close to than others. Some of my clients
Mm.
enjoy people to know that I'm their publicist, and some of them don't want nobody to know that they
Mhm.
have publicists.
Mm.
So
Mm.
it just all depends on the person. But for the most part, we are creative directors,
Mhm.
we're security at times, we're
Mhm.
management at times, we're babysitters at
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
I always like to thank PR is a thankless job.
Mhm.
Like we don't often get thanked, and people don't
Really.
understand how much we actually do.
Yeah.
Because it's more than the moments that you see. There's a
Yeah.
lot of build up, a lot of
Yeah.
strategizing, and a lot of creative process
Mhm.
that goes behind creating those actual
Yeah.
moments.
So what do you think are like some misconceptions of PR? Like what do people feel like people in PR actually do?
I think one of the biggest
Yeah.
misconceptions is people think that PR is what I am. I'm not
Yeah.
a PR. I'm a publicist. I
Yeah.
do PR, and PR is public relations.
Mhm.
Another big misconception is that we make people famous, and that's our job to make people famous. I can't make anybody famous, and it's not my job to make you famous. You have to have a story that is newsworthy,
Mhm.
or you have to have something about yourself that is newsworthy so that I have something to narrate to the
Mhm.
public. You also have to have something going on. PR is not for somebody that's sitting still. Um, and PR is not for somebody that's boring. PR is not for a boring personality.
Mhm.
You have to have something going on in order for PR to be effective and for it to work. And so I think a lot of times people don't understand that
Yeah.
concept. People also think that we can guarantee results. I can't
Mhm.
guarantee results because
Right.
at the end of the day, it's you and me working together. So if I'm doing everything on my end and you're not doing anything on your end, or you're doing everything on your end and I'm barely making moves on my end,
Mhm.
then the results are not going to be the same results. And everybody results differ. It takes at least 3 to 6 months to see some sort of PR in real life, and then 6 to 9 months or to 12 months to see any type of consistent PR and build a consistent name. And I think a lot of times with social media, people confuse the two. Social media is an add on to PR and is very effective in today's uh, PR setting, but
Mhm.
that's not the end all be all.
Mhm. Mhm. Now, when you say it's not the end all be all, what do you mean by that? It sounds like people they come to you and they say, "Hey, I want to just make sure that I'm popping on Instagram."
Popping on Instagram. It's beyond Instagram
Yeah.
because Instagram is only one platform of people. Instagram has its own audience,
Mhm.
and so you can't just worry about Instagram because
Yeah.
guess what?
Yeah.
If Instagram got deleted, it got deleted tomorrow.
Right.
If it
Right.
got banned tomorrow,
Like TikTok.
you've put all of
Yeah.
your eggs in one basket. You've
Mhm.
built a brand based
Mhm.
off of a specific platform,
Mhm.
and guess what? There's a whole group of people
Mhm.
around the world, closer than you think, that don't know anything about Instagram. I
Mhm.
always tell people you have to realize that traditional media is going to
Mm.
always win.
Mhm.
TV,
Mhm.
radio,
Mhm.
film, it's never
Mhm.
going anywhere.
Mhm. So, how much does a verification check on Instagram matter?
Um, I'm not a big fan of it. To people, it's a vanity thing. Most people who are begging for a verification check want to feel important. That blue check don't make you less.
Yeah.
That don't make you more important than the person that don't have the blue check. For me, the most important thing about Instagram is not how many followers you have, but who's following you,
Mm.
who's
Explain what you. Yeah.
engaging with you.
Yeah.
Because you can have 1 million followers and you put a product on the market, and the product is geared to one particular audience. You're not familiar with who your audience
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
and you've just wasted all of this time, this money, this effort of building this platform for a following, and you haven't connected or found who your audience or what your niche is. And so it's all pointless. So I think more so, again, it's not about the blue check, it's not about the number of followers, but it's about who your audience is, how engaged they are, how engaged with you they are, and also who's following you.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this because it's an interesting question. As a publicist, would you work with anybody, or do you have a certain criteria that a person has to meet before you can actually work with them, and why?
In the beginning, I did work with anybody because I
Yeah.
wanted to prove my
Mhm.
skill set. I feel like just like anybody who grows and they become greater in their profession,
Mhm.
you then have to put prerequisites in of of how people get in contact with you, or how you work with people. And so now I'm very picky because now I'm known to represent a certain caliber of people, and who I represent and what I do and who I take on now affects the rest of my clientele.
Mm.
I want people to respect me. I want people to respect my time. And I want people to respect the brands that I've built or the brands that I've put so much of my heart and my creativity into. And so because I want that, I have to be selective of what I take in, the energy I surround myself with, the brands I surround myself with, and the brands that I decide to represent.
Hmm. Now, once you actually represent a client, right?
Mhm.
What's the perfect, in your opinion? What's the perfect publicist client relationship? Like, how does that flow?
Um, I guess I can give that by giving an example of two clients who I absolutely love, who I feel like we have the best relationship. Quay, I've been with Quay from the beginning of his career.
When you say
And
Quay,
blame it on Quay. He's
gotcha.
an award-winning actor, comedian, and he was not a traditional. He wasn't a traditional client that another publicist would have took on. But for me, I saw gold,
Hmm.
and more than seeing gold in him, he saw gold in me as a publicist. And so we kind of grew together. He was one of my first clients. I was his first publicist.
Question: why do you say that he's not necessarily the type of client that the publicist would take on?
Because before Quay, there wasn't a lot of Instagram famous, or there wasn't a lot of comedians who were using publicists. There was not a lot of social media phenoms that was using publicists. People didn't know what lane or how to carve out a brand, or people were afraid to pitch him, or people were afraid to kind of touch that brand. It was like a taboo. And although we had the Martin Lawrences and everything before them, it was just like it being on social media, it was all kind of new. And he was breaking 1 million views and things at the time, but it was still kind of hard. People didn't take him serious. And then I think he also came out in a time where it was a turning point. Traditional media was upset at social media because traditional media was losing because social media was winning. And so he's not an actor yet, but he's also not someone regular in that. You need him. Television producers needed him because they needed him to create content that was going to push
Hmm.
their shows to get people to view the network. And then he needed them because he wanted to break into TV and he wanted to break into film and acting. And so it was one of the type of situations where I felt like I came in at the right time. He taught me a lot about myself. I taught him a lot about himself, and we kind of grew together because we were both transitioning into new orders. And so for that,
Hmm.
I feel like that's one of the best client professional relationships,
Hmm.
client publicist relationships, because we've grown together, so we know each other.
Hmm.
Another one is Karen Civil.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just like she knows her lane, and whereas everyone thinks she's a publicist, she's a marketer, and she knows that. And she
Yes.
comes to me when it's time to narrate stories
Uh-huh.
or write things down, and she's okay with that when it's time to get on red carpets and get in certain places. And let's not get it confused. She has the access, but with her knowing that she has the access, she still trusts me to run the point because she knows that that's what I love to do and that's my profession. So I love me and Karen's relationship. She's another person that taught me she teaches me so much about myself just in the process of allowing me to do my job, teaching me new things, constantly
Hmm.
putting me on to new people,
Hmm.
and making me demand my worth and what it
Hmm.
is that I'm really worth, and what I'm really worth in this
Yeah.
industry. So I think those type of relationships, when you both are benefiting off of the service,
Hmm.
and you both are growing off the service, and you can see the growth,
Hmm.
and you can see new moments that you wouldn't have necessarily gotten by yourself or on your own. I think those type of relationships are the relationships that you need, and those are the perfect relationships.
Gotcha. Now, what is it about being a publicist specifically that you love, right? What is it?
It's the connecting the dots,
Yeah.
and it's the seeing things. It's kind of like the science project where um, you come up with this idea. You don't know how the hell you're gonna make it come
Hmm.
true. You don't know how you're gonna get from point A to point B, but you have this idea. You put a lot of other ideas underneath in an outline, and you just keep on going and keep on going. And it starts off as a sprinkle of snow, it ends up being this huge snowman, and you don't know how it got there because it's not something that ordinarily happens every single day. And so I
Hmm.
think it's just being able to connect the dots, and seeing your vision come to life. And
Hmm.
just having a canvas, and the canvas is a person.
Hmm.
And again, like I'm very passionate about seeing people dreams come true. I'm very
Hmm.
passionate about seeing people reach their goals. I'm very passionate about seeing people get to where they want to be.
Hmm.
And it takes time,
Hmm.
but it's feels really good to see an idea turn into something that's so much bigger.
Now, would you say being a publicist is more so about the big clients, or somebody can make a living being a publicist by just doing PR for the general public?
Someone can definitely make a living by doing PR for a general public because
Okay.
not everyone is meant to deal with high profile people.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of important people that need publicists that don't have the spotlight on them. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
politicians, there's a lot of pastors. Those people are still public figures, but they're local public figures. So there are all different reasons to there's all different needs for publicists and different reasons for a person to be a publicist. It's just you have to find your niche and what you're
Yeah.
good at
Yeah.
and figure out which lane of PR you want to be in because there's a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. Now, how, and I know it's kind of redundant, right? But how important is relationships in PR, and how have you established your relationships? And how long has it actually taken you to establish the relationships that you've established?
Some relationships are easier than others
Yeah.
to establish, and some it takes a while to establish.
Mm-hmm.
There's been people that I've been emailing from since the beginning of my career, but because I didn't have
Yeah.
the right client,
Yeah.
it didn't break that relationship off.
Mhm.
There's people who come to me and want to build a relationship with me because I have a certain client. Relationships are very important. I always like to tell people relationships is the best form of the best form of currency you
Mhm.
can have. There was this post on Instagram not too long ago.
Mhm.
Would you rather $50,000 in cash or a dinner with Jay-Z?
Yeah.
Most people will say, I want $50,000 in cash. But for
Mhm.
me, I want dinner with Jay-Z because
Mhm.
dinner with Jay-Z is priceless and that can amount to more than $50,000 in cash. Jay-Z can like me, can like my ideas, and I've closed a deal that's bigger than $50,000 in cash. Currency don't have a value. The person who has the currency is the one who has the value. And when I look at people who said they would take the $50,000, they're the same people that's right now getting pandemic unemployment and or
Mhm.
these PPE loans, and you don't even know how to flip the money that you're getting for free. So
Mhm.
why would you take the $50,000 opposed to putting yourself in a place where you can get so much more out of life? Relationships are the best forms of currency on this earth.
So I know a lot of people, they want celebrities as clients, right?
Mhm.
But a lot of the times you can probably do just as good with getting an influencer. So what would you say is the difference between getting a celebrity as a client and an influencer on social media?
The difference is reach, honestly, in tiers of clients, because these influencers are now building their own tier of celebrity. A lot of these influencers are more influential than actual celebrities. A lot of these celebrities are now tapping on to these influencers for some sort of reach and some sort of clout. We have to remember these influencers are building their fan base because everyday people have access to them and can relate to them. Whereas in a celebrity, in order for me, my definition of celebrity is untouchable, unreachable, and someone you look up to. I love Beyonce because Beyonce is one, her work ethic is bananas, but it's her unreachableness that makes you love Beyonce. But in that same breath of me loving Beyonce, I love a B Simone or a Lala Milan or a Blame It on Quay because they are reachable. They're those dreams, seeing them manifest everything that they want out of life, and seeing them come up makes you feel like you can reach that level of celebrity. And so I think it's just all in how you take it in. At the end of the day, we're all just regular people. And some of us are blessed to have more reach and a broader range of public likeliness than others.
Gotcha. So what qualifies somebody to work with you, and what would you recommend to somebody who wants to work with you but may not be ready? What do they need to do before they actually come and meet with you?
One, I used to always be like, I'll take everybody. But I have to be honest with myself. One, you have to have a budget. I think that's the number one, that's the number one qualification I look for now. Not because I want your money, um, but because what I've learned, and this is just by me using this method on myself, you tend to really believe in yourself. You tend to really be serious about building a brand. You tend to really have a story when you're ready to invest in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You can't you can't expect me to want to invest in you if you don't want to invest in yourself. That's
Mm-hmm.
one. Having a story, because again, it's not my job to create a story for you.
Mm.
It's your job to have something going on in your life that is newsworthy so that I can make a story and create a narrative for you and send out to the general masses.
Now that's interesting because I know some PRs they actually what they do is they put out fictitious stories. How do you feel about that?
Um, if they so what I know about the fictitious stories, because I've myself had to do take those type of methods. The
Hmm.
fictitious stories are all a part of a grander scheme of things. It's all a part of a strategy because there is some truth to that story, but because we want you to believe this is what we're gonna put out. And it's not that it's fictitious,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just we want you to focus on the other spectrum of the story opposed to this. And so we're gonna go ahead and put this out so
Hmm.
that so that we have the upper hand and we can narrate what's going on.
So right now we're actually in the time during the pandemic, during the coronavirus, right? Now I know a lot of people they're only taking stories that have to do with either the coronavirus or the election that's happening in November. How does that actually affect what you do, and how should people go about doing that when it comes to PR?
It affects us all, honestly. And I will say, I'll be completely honest and transparent. It has been harder now to pitch clients and pivot because people only want to focus on those particular events. We're focused on Black Lives Matter. We're focused on the pandemic. We're focused on the presidential election. But in hindsight, when you think about it, all of those things directly affect everything that's going on in our everyday world. It affects you, it affects me. And so, as a creative, because a publicist is a creative, it's my job to figure out how I can relate whatever my clients have going on to that particular situation. And I feel like there's a need for us to relate everyday
Hmm.
situations to what's actually going on. Because
Hmm.
as Black people and as just people in general,
Hmm.
we all deserve to have some sort of voice and we all deserve
Hmm.
to align our real lives with what's really going on in the world.
Hmm. And the pandemic in itself is actually unique, and I think it showed a lot of people in a lot of different industries, what they're really about, right?
Right.
So as it relates to you and as it relates to PR, what has the pandemic taught you? What has it showed you about the clients that you currently had during the pandemic, and what would you advise somebody going forward with PR how they should handle opposition?
Um, well, for one, it taught me to go back to the basics. It taught me to leave modern PR alone for a little bit
Hmm.
and go back to studying what PR really is.
Hmm.
As a publicist, it's my job to find a solution for every problem.
Hmm.
And so for so long, like I said, we've had social media, we've had red carpets, we've had
Hmm.
so many other things outside of what PR traditionally is,
Hmm.
to kind of escape
Hmm.
doing the actual job. And with this pandemic, it made me sit down and think, wait a minute, can I really tell stories? Can I really cultivate a person's brand? Can I really do what I need to do to elevate this person to the next level and make sure people are still talking about this person
Hmm.
amidst everything that's going on? And so it definitely made me take a step back and restructure and pivot and learn the importance of
Hmm.
finding solutions. But it made me more confident, in a sense of I hadn't failed.
Hmm.
I hadn't failed yet.
Hmm.
It Although I thought the worst when this first started,
Hmm.
things have actually been a lot better
Hmm.
for my brand.
Hmm.
I've been able to step into who I am
Hmm.
and create a lot of personal content.
Hmm.
And one of the things I'm excited about, it gave me time to refocus and take everything that I know about PR and kind of put a product out that's going to be able to change the world.
Yeah.
And so I've been working on this platform along with my business partner Jamal Terrence called Black Boys Magic.
Okay.
And I think had it not been for the pandemic
Hmm.
and had it not been for having, I won't say extra time because I am working a lot harder,
Hmm.
but because I'm able to stay still,
Hmm.
and there's not as much travel, and it's not a lot of what I do is already on the computer.
Yeah.
It's giving me time to invest in things that are needed right now. And with social media
Hmm.
being the end all be all right now,
Hmm.
with media really just having a forefront,
Hmm.
it it allowed me to create my own media platform.
So you talked about Black Boys Magic. Can you expound a little bit about that? What is that about?
Yeah, so I'm super excited about it,
Yeah.
especially getting ready to release it now. I don't think there's a better time. With everything that's going on in the world, as a publicist, I found myself constantly pitching these stories, pitching stories of Black men who are doing positive things in the world, pitching stories of Black men who are kind
Mm-hmm.
of changing the trajectory,
Mm-hmm.
positive Black men. And
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like there wasn't a lot of pickup of those stories. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was talking with my business partner one day, and he had already been mentioning wanting to do a blog. So I was like, hey, let's
Mm-hmm.
do something called Black Boys Magic.
Mm-hmm.
That way we can tell our stories. Who better to tell stories than Black men?
Mm-hmm.
Um, the whole reason why I got into PR again was to change people's perceptions and thoughts about situations or about
Mm-hmm.
brands.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if I can change the perception of a positive Black man,
Mm-hmm.
being a positive Black man, I definitely want to do so. And so, it's a blog. It's more of a lifestyle than it is a
Mm-hmm.
blog, but it's gonna be essentially a blog, a media platform where we honor positive Black stories, and
Yeah.
we are opposed to sharing those negative stories that
Oh,
are
that's
only
beautiful.
shared for
Yeah.
clickbait. And so
Yeah.
I'm super excited about it. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's going to be I think it's going to be epic, and I'm just excited for the world to see it.
It's beautiful. Name some of the celebrity clients, and I know you could probably name a lot. Just name a couple for me. Just a couple celebrity clients that you've worked with.
Justin Combs. I've done Diddy, multiple parties for Diddy. I've done stuff for people don't know. I styled Solange once.
Oh wow.
So I've styled Solange. I've worked for Cardi B's
Mm-hmm.
campaign. I've worked for Blame No Quay, of course,
Mm-hmm.
Lala Milan.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've done stuff for Tawanda
Yeah.
Braxton.
Yeah.
You name it, I've probably done it. Right now, I'm actually helping with a rollout for Migos. So it's just
Yeah. That's
like
a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
it's just like I pride myself in being the publicist that even if a client has another publicist, I want to be that extension for a publicist to
Correct.
help them out. Because again, I'm just a firm believer you can never know too much and you can
Mm-hmm.
never do too much. And we're only as good as the person
Mm-hmm.
we help.
Mm-hmm.
That's like one of my biggest. That's one of my biggest attributes in life. I love helping other
Mm-hmm.
people succeed.
You had an actual big moment, big viral moment, right? With Black China. What was that about?
Oh, I forgot to mention her. I mean, it is what it is. It was one of the moments where, as a publicist, I was very passionate in that. At that particular moment, she had a huge interview coming up.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of the first interviews that we set up to kind of change the people's perception of her. I think a lot of times people get to a certain point as celebrities, they feel like their name is a lot bigger. And they feel like they can talk to you or handle you any kind of way. And it was just me and her in a simple disagreement. Her not understanding that you're at Wendy because I pitched you for Wendy, and me needing to humble myself to know that I wouldn't have been able to pitch someone to Wendy if I didn't have her. So it was just one of the moments where both our egos kind of reached a peak, and it was a blow up. But what people don't understand is that was one of the first times we ever worked together. So we had a long relationship, and still now, I respect Angela. Um, we still have a relationship in the sense of I understand who she is, she understands who I am, she knows my work ethic. I know I know her strengths and her weaknesses as it pertains to a client publicist relationship, and it was a good viral moment for me. I got a couple followers off of it.
I know a lot of people, when they're looking for a publicist, they ask this question, whether it's to you or whether it's to themselves. They say, why should I hire a PR? So, what qualifies a PR to be hired?
Well,
Like,
what
why can't somebody do it themselves?
what qualifies a publicist to be hired? It's our relationships. And it's again, we're storytellers, we're creatives, we narrate a person's brand. You can't be the person you need to be if you're focused on building a public's perception of the person you think you are. So, I mean, it's no different from It's no different from someone who is a event planner, and then someone who's wedding planner. Those are two different level of magnitudes of events. Some things are more in depth, and then some things are not as in depth.
Hmm.
And so I feel like once you get to a place where your talent is your primary focus, or your brand is your primary focus, or you being the face of your primary message, you have to have someone who's out there narrating that message for you constantly, because it's almost not it's almost not achievable to do both. It's not. You just can't do both, because you're going to be better at one of them. And so it's kind of
Hmm.
like hire a publicist.
Do you recommend having multiple PRs at one time?
No.
Why not?
And I know people who do, but it just causes confusion, because if you have two publicists, and let's say both of your publicists kind of have the same reach or the same niche,
Hmm.
then we're crossing paths, and we're both doing the same job
Hmm.
when we could be doing something else. I've worked on teams where there's been multiple publicists on the teams, and again, I'm not opposed to working with other publicists. I just think if you can afford to have one publicist, and if you are passionate about, you're just passionate about your brand, you're passionate about being serious with the people that you work with, you should probably just have one publicist, because it makes life a lot easier. Unless you have two different things going
Hmm.
on, and this publicist is only good at this and this publicist is only good at that, then I think it can work. But in my experiences, it's best to kind of just have one publicist.
Hmm. Now, would you say that PR drives marketing or that marketing drives PR?
I think they're two completely different things.
Okay, so if I hire a publicist, then should I worry about marketing?
No. So you're actually supposed to have the publicist, in my opinion, is probably the last person you should add on your team.
Okay.
In order to even have a publicist, you have to have a story to tell. You have to have a brand. You have to have a message. You have to have something that's newsworthy. In order to be newsworthy, to have a brand, and to have a household name, you would have had to already build your audience. You would have had to already expand your audience. And that's where marketing comes in. You would have already had to spend those marketing dollars. Publicists come in to alleviate the marketing dollars. Publicity is a luxury service.
Hmm.
It's a service that you obtain when you've already obtained every other service for your business. You should have
Hmm.
already had a manager. You should have already had a marketing director. You
Mm.
should have already had those things in place before you hired a publicist. Because
Mm.
again, I'm going to need a story to be able to tell, or I'm going to have a product, and I don't come up with those products. I can narrate the story, but I'm not coming up with the product. I'm not. That's just not what I do. I can do it,
Hmm.
but that's just not my profession.
So, would you recommend PR for a startup company or a startup brand?
I would recommend PR for a startup company, a startup brand, if they have those other pieces already in place. Because
Hmm.
we can make you newsworthy. We can help you become newsworthy, but you have to have content. Content is like key. You have to have content. You have to have something going on. You have to have the idea. You have to have the structure. You have to know, and have identified who your audience is going to be prior to hiring a publicist. You have to have
Hmm.
your brand story together.
Hmm. Now, a lot of people right now they're doing EPKs and
Mhm.
media kits. Are those methods are those dead?
No. And I wish people go back into continuously sending those out. So with the EPK and the media kits, that's the easiest way for your publicist to be able to pitch you, or a media outlet to be able to get all of your statistics in one place of who you are as a person. But I have to read a boring, long, drawn out email, or not having to go do your research. Those things should actually be updated. And if you feel like 6 pages is too much, then create a one sheet for each particular thing that you're doing. Like, let's say you're releasing a new single, create a one sheet for that, where someone can go and find the video for the single. They can find the track, figure out how many plays you've already had. Those are the things that you update every single week. And not only that, it just looks a lot better when
Hmm.
you go into a meeting and someone asks you something about your brand or about your business, and you have it all in one place, and you can scroll from one page to the next page. And it's another form of content. And again, content is key when you have a brand, or when you have a brand, or when you're trying to reach the masses. People
Hmm.
love pictures or visuals more than they love actual words.
So when it comes to a publicist trying to figure out what's the perfect retainer for themselves, how should they go about that?
One, I think it has a lot to do with, it's just like any other job. It has a lot to do with how long you've been in the profession. What results are you able, that you're truthfully able to provide for another client, or for your client. I think you should also knowledge,
Hmm.
knowledge. You should really look into your knowledge and make sure that you can, again, do what you say you're going to do. I'm a firm believer in not, I don't want to say tricking because it's not a pleasant word,
Hmm. Hmm.
but um, don't undercut yourself.
Hmm.
Don't undercut yourself, because it is a strenuous job. It is a job that calls for you to work long hours. It is a job that is thankless, and so definitely make sure that you are giving yourself, or you are charging your worth.
So I know that, if a client meets your qualifications, right? If they
Mhm.
qualify, now they're your client. Now, what happens once they start to get unethical? Do you continue to work with them, like cut ties? What happens?
I'm a strong believer in cutting ties with people that don't feed your soul or don't serve you any purpose. I'm also a firm believer that as an adult, you have to be comfortable with understanding that not every relationship is meant to be, you're not meant to be in a relationship with everybody together. You're not meant to have a working relationship with everybody together. It's okay if the piece of the puzzle don't fit. It's like a shoe not fitting. It's okay. That's a part of life. As adults, we have to understand that. For me, I'm a strong believer in ethics and morals. And so if it does not, if it's not ethical, and if it's not morally correct to what my standards is, or what my company standards is, I'm a firm believer in just letting it go. And I would hope, as a client, if I don't serve a client's purpose ethically and morally, they let me go as well. There's no point or no sense in staying in something that's not beneficial to
Hmm.
the growth of a brand. And at
Hmm.
the end of the day, it's the I Am Freshy brand, and people are
Hmm.
going to look at me and what I tie my name to, and that's going to deter or determine what type of clients I can get in the long run.
Hmm.
And so it's a part of the business. It's always business and never personal.
Gotcha. So if it doesn't fit, then we must have quit.
Exactly.
Gotcha. So how does one measure the effectiveness of a PR campaign?
There's not a in all honesty, there's not a direct way to measure it, but I think you would measure it just like you would measure anyone else. You set your goals, measure anything else. You set goals, you set expectations, and you within those goals you set objectives. Those objectives that you set, as long as you're checking off those objectives, you meet those objectives. You now have something to go back and say, hey. We're one step closer to this. We're two step closer to this. We're three step closer to this. And then of course you can check social media. You can check your name mentions. You can check your Google alerts. You should be able to see your brand grow publicly, publicly, and that's how you know that you are doing or you are receiving effective PR.
Hmm. Now, what makes you even want to put out a course?
What makes me want to put out a course is I just really feel like although I'm not the traditional publicist, I do have some traditional ways
Hmm.
about myself. And I feel like PR has had a spotlight over the last couple of years, of where people are now interested in wanting to be a publicist and wanting to know what it is that we do. We're now finally getting out of the whole black and walkie talkie
Hmm.
movement and
Hmm.
becoming a profession that people want. And so if I could be the example for the light that I found
Hmm.
in PR, then I definitely want to be that example. I definitely want to shine that light, and I definitely want to be able to help those who's coming after me, be great publicists. And also, someone can be watching this, and although I'm totally against doing your own PR because I think it's really tacky to pitch yourself,
Hmm.
someone may not have the budget to pay someone like myself and be able to take some things from here and be able to pitch themselves and get themselves to a point
Hmm.
where they can where they can then build a brand and get some leverage and be able to afford a publicist.
Beautiful, beautiful. What are some ways that people can connect with you outside of this interview?
Outside this interview, people can connect me on social media. It's I am Phreshy, IAMPHRESHY. I'm on Instagram, and my brand is IAMPHRESHY BRAND. www.theIamFreshybrand.com. You can Google me. Um, yeah, you just reach out to me.
Yeah, well, it was great talking to you. Definitely check out the Black Boys Magic, and I look forward to your course.
No, I appreciate you. Thank you for sitting down with me or allowing me to sit down with you.